Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Bagley from Battle Creek PD. He has over 30 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Bagley. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Paige. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. So, whenever you're ready, fire away.
I'm looking forward to it as well. There are a few things that we talked about that I'm excited to touch on today. Give us a little bit of background on you. 30 years is a long time to be in this profession. So anything that
Yeah,
you can share with us about you as a person, your
sure.
career, I'll let you take the floor.
Well, gosh, it's been a great run for me. Initially I thought I was gonna, coach football and wrestling and teach science in high school. And how I kind of came into the profession a little bit differently. I had family members that were in law enforcement, kind of throughout the country. But again, I thought I played a lot of sports, enjoyed coaching, so I thought I'd found my niche and was headed in that direction. And one of the young men that were playing football for me at the time's dad was he was a lieutenant in the sheriff's department in the county in which we resided. So he approached me one day after practice and was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about a career in law enforcement?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I'd kicked it around, but again, I thought, my path was, set, and that's the direction I was headed." So he just said, "Hey, look, there's a thing called a reserve deputy program. Why don't you just come in? It's an academy. It's about 10 weeks long. You come, like one Wednesday and then a few Saturdays a month, and you could just see if this is something that you want to explore." So I did, and uh, completed that and was a reserve deputy here in the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department for a few years, and literally 180'd the direction that I was going. Fell in love with the profession. And again, I like to preface this by I believe that, these first responder professions, right, whether it's police, fire, or EMS, medical, I think those are callings, right? I think those individuals that kind of get into it understand that. I think they have a servant's heart, and I think they're called to these professions. I know for that kind of held true for me in my kind of journey through this. So again, fast forward, was a reserve deputy for a few years. Exposed me to, or gave me a bit of a taste to what law enforcement was about. And in 1993, I got hired in at the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, where I spent the next almost 26 years, and I had a blessed career. Um, I started out in patrol, and then was selected to go into I worked undercover for a number of years, was then promoted to detective, did that for a few years, then was promoted to the rank of sergeant, and back in patrol and supervised road operations for a number of years in Kalamazoo. And Kalamazoo is a bit unique because it's a police, fire, and EMS. It's actually the largest public safety department in the country. And you carry your fire gear in the trunk of your car. You respond to a fire, get dressed in the street, go fight the fire, and come back, put your stuff back on, and then go back and take calls.
Wow.
And then we also respond to medical response calls as well. So I'm sorry. You look like you had a question.
No, I
Oh,
am just thinking that you look so young to have been in this career so long. And I think my question for you is, you know, being in this career for so long and knowing the stresses
mhm.
and the traumatic events that come along with this career, how have you been able to have a long and successful career with all of that on top of it? Like, how have you
Uh,
been able to process those things? How have you been able to grow and adapt and be successful in spite of all of the trauma and stress that comes with this career?
Fantastic question. Again, for me, I'm a man of faith, and my faith plays a significant role in, it's stress over time and cumulative when you start talking about all of the carnage, the human carnage that you see. The women and men that are in these first responder professions, they're going to see a lot. They're going to see some things. Now that varies depending upon, size of an organization and number of calls for services, but you can't do these jobs without experiencing some of the worst moments, not only in your life, but in other people's lives. So for me, I think being centered in my faith has helped enormously for me. Secondly, you gotta have outside interests and hobbies. Um, I've tried to not allow this career to define me, like that this is part of me. I've been blessed. I've thoroughly enjoyed the 30 little over 30 years now that I've been able to do this. I feel myself very lucky that I've been able to have a wide width and breadth of different experiences throughout this time frame. But I think number one is understanding that you got to take care of yourself and understanding that you have to decompress, right? You have to be able to, whether it's, I enjoy working out, right? So I like to get into the gym. I have hobbies. I love the outdoors. I'm a big outdoors guy. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I spent a lot of my time outdoors, and that helps immensely. I have a very supportive family. Um, and despite my best efforts, even my son has followed in my footsteps. He's employed now, and he works at the place in the city of Kalamazoo where I retired from. And my daughter's out in Denver, and she works as a speech pathologist in the public schools and develops lesson planning and all that stuff for kids on the autistic spectrum. So it is a uh, again, I truly, it's a calling, right? And when I first got into this, 1993, in January 1993 is when I started at Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. And, man, it doesn't seem that long ago, but wow, it is. Thanks for reminding me. But again, blessed. But we didn't have the conversations, right? We didn't. There wasn't a lot of emphasis placed on how stress and trauma and how what are you supposed to do with that? And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I saw some people that I worked with, turn to things that weren't healthy, right? Whether it's too much alcohol or fill in the blank, just an overall unhealthy lifestyle. And, you know, we kind of navigated that throughout my career until it really became a thing, I'd say in the mid 2000s, there was more conversation about officer wellness and health and emphasizing of how do you decompress and having you can't have all your friends be other cops in this situation, right? You need to have that. You need to have friends that you can't talk work to, that you have other interests, and making sure that you're taking care of yourself in your diet, and working out, and just burning that stuff off that you're exposed to, because it's I like to call it a backpack, right?
Yeah.
Your backpack will get full in these professions. It's not a question of if, it's when. And hopefully you can be preventative in not allowing that to occur. Uh, but understanding that even if you're doing all of that, there could be that buildup or that situation where, man, it all of a sudden now that you're full. And what do you do with it when that happens?
Yeah. Well, and it's so heavy. That
Yeah.
backpack is so heavy, and we talk about this a lot, because I think that a lot of times we don't take care of ourselves in the same
Mhm.
way that we would take care of other people, right? Like if you
Right.
saw your mom or your grandma walking around with that really heavy backpack on their back, you'd be like, "Hey, let's help you out here. Let's try
Yeah.
to take some of these out. Let me, what do we got to do to kind of lighten that load for you so that, you
Mhm.
can, and when it's us, we're like, oh, we're just gonna bear down. Like we got it, we're just gonna walk 100 miles with this really heavy backpack. And I really appreciate that you really kind of showcase that wellness is not a one size fits
No.
all, that there's a lot
Right.
of different things that you can do to be
Hmm.
able to offload, to decompress, to counteract all of the things that we know are givens. They're
Yeah.
inevitable with your career, right? You
Right.
know that there's going to be stress. You know that you're going to see things that are super traumatic and consistently. So you can't control that, right? You can't control
Right.
what you see in the calls that you get and the people you encounter, but we can counteract those things through healthy coping mechanisms
Oh,
and
of course.
interest. And that is wellness. So for you to say, I like to go outside and I like to hunt and I like to fish. I'm also rooted in my faith. That's a part of wellness.
Hmm.
All of these things are wellness, and it's the healthy coping mechanisms that we're trying to reach for versus the unhealthy, that we
Right.
talked about before, whether that's avoiding, escaping, numbing, drinking, whatever,
Right.
your choice is for that. And I really have a lot of respect for leadership right now because you guys did come from that era where it was rub dirt on it, go drink it
Yeah.
away,
Hmm.
and that was the acceptable method of
Yeah.
dealing with these things.
Hmm.
And you have had to almost rewire and retrain yourself to think in a different way and to
Right.
now prioritize wellness in a different way than what was taught to you in the beginning.
No, exactly. And you can't do better if you don't know better. So, you go back in time and you look at it and you go, yeah, you were to swallow those emotions, right? You weren't to show emotion. As a matter of fact, there's always that stigma of you would be viewed as weak, right? Regardless of whether you're, a woman or a man, it's that persona, right? That you're trying to maintain. And I think, although we're not, I don't think there yet. Um, it's changed for the better significantly. Um, but there's still a little bit of that. I think too much of that within the profession itself still.
Yeah.
Um, because things are I mean, it's so difficult now, right? And fill in the blank. Social media has there for all of the amazing things that have occurred out of social media. Uh, I think it's done more negative. It's been more negative than not, right? And just from a whole societal standpoint, this is the toughest we've ever seen first responders, but specifically when we're talking about law enforcement for recruiting and getting good high caliber individuals to want to be in law enforcement, right? And there's a lot of reasons why, right? But one of I think the most significant aspects or contributors to what we're seeing is, I believe that this is a very when done properly, this is a noble profession, right? Worthy of one's lifetime endeavor, right? Especially if you approach it with a servant's heart. Because I have never met, and again, I've had to deal with a couple, I'll call it, officers that whether they got into it and they had this proclivity or if whatever developed into mis or bad behavior, and we dealt with them because I'm a firm believer in look at you can't betray public trust and occupy the role of a peace officer. So I acknowledge wholeheartedly we make mistakes and sometimes there's just bad people in the profession that we need to get them weeded out. But I have 99% of the time I have not met an officer that gets into this and not at the base they want to make a difference and they want to help people, right?
Yeah.
um, and that's the focus. It's trying to have the conversations about remember your why did you want to do this job. And some people are comfortable talking about it, some people aren't comfortable talking about it, but again, I think it's important. It goes to the content of your character, right? The purpose is if you have a servant's heart, you were called to do the profession, you enter it because you want to make a difference in the community, you want to help. And if you don't keep the most important things or the right things, man, it can jade you. So, being able to have the decompression time and being able to talk and being able to, hey, I need some time because of whatever happened. So it's near and dear to my heart just because of what, I came up through and the things that I experienced and kind of seeing the transition. But we live in a day and age now where this is probably, in my opinion, uh, this is one of the toughest jobs you can do because of everything going on from a societal standpoint, right?
Yeah.
All the issues associated with what we're seeing in society across this country, it's a microcosm of where you are. And it's impacting the behavior of people, whether it's mental health or drug abuse, or you fill in the blank, right? These officers are seeing things in real time. Uh, more often than not, they're dealing with individuals at their very worst for whatever that reason is, and they're seeing things, repeated things that are just the repetition or the volume is getting a bit more. I'll call it chronic. than what we've seen in the past. You know, the uptick in mental health, the uptick in what we're seeing throughout this country. Although we've seen a bit of a decrease in overall violent crime, you're seeing a skyrocketing increase in mental health, specific to domestic violence, right? Child abuse, those type of things haven't diminished to the in correlation to what we've seen with violent crime. So being able to have that outlet for an officer to understand, wow, this is impacting me. I think one of the keys is understanding, oh, wow, it's impacting me. Because a lot of times I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was a death of a child or something that you were you were stressed, right? You felt a way about it, but you didn't understand what that was doing to you. And it wasn't until 5, 10 years into the profession that we started having those conversations. You look back, you go, oh wow, I get it. I know what I was feeling now. So we're doing a lot better in some senses, but I think also the stresses of the job itself have increased significantly.
Yeah. And there's a few things I want to kind of dissect in what you just said. And the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a really interesting topic, and I can see it from two different sides because
Mm-hmm.
I have been there where I thought that it was weak to deal with whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I learned from a really early age, shove it down, posture up, keep
Mm-hmm.
going, and don't let it affect you.
Right.
But now being on the other side of things, it's really interesting. And I want to see if you understand like what I mean, if this is
Mm-hmm.
clocking. I think perception is really a powerful thing. The way that we
Sure.
perceive things, and for so long we have perceived, if you have to talk to someone about it, or if you go and you take care of your wellness, then it's weak, right? If you show emotion, then it's weak.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the coping mechanisms that are the opposite, right? It's the drinking, it's the escaping, it's the avoiding. And now that I'm on the other side, and I've gone through this process of, offloading and, choosing
Mm-hmm.
healthier coping mechanisms for myself, I now recognize that the weakness is in the things that we are teaching people our strength, right? So it's
Right.
like saying, hey, like, yeah, suck it up and go drink.
Mm-hmm.
To me, drinking's easy. It's easy to go get drunk. Like it's easy to
Yeah.
like forget about something and not deal with it. To me, that is the biggest weakness of all. The
Right.
strength and the hard work is actually dealing with it, is processing
Right.
it. It's the things that we want to avoid are the things that require the most strength and courage to get through them. And so I think it's really interesting that maybe as a society, we have said, hey, the strength is over here, don't deal with it, just go drink, when in reality, that's the weakness.
Oh yeah. You very poignant. What you said. You know, it's but we're creatures of the path of least resistance, right?
100%.
So it takes courage to confront things, right? Um, by the very nature, law enforcement, yeah, it takes courage to walk into a house of domestic violence and deal with an armed gun, whether it's a search warrant, fill in the blank, an active shooter. Those are all things that because of the training and because of the type of individuals that get into the like that's scary and there's fear involved with it, but you're trained to do some of these things, right? So they can handle it. It's the all of the trauma, the emotional carnage associated with these tragic and traumatic situations that we didn't talk, they didn't teach any of this when I went to college, right? When I was in college and going, this was not a topic of discussion. So when you're getting hit in the face with some of these things, two, three, four, depending upon the week, you could get that in a night, and you're reeling. You can't show that, right? Because I got to go to the next call, right? So this call's a traffic stop. The next call, you might be dealing with a, a, a traffic accident fatality, and then you're going to a shooting or a stabbing or fill in the blank. That's real. Like I've experienced those type of calls back to back to back, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden, we work 12-hour shifts, and you're 8, 10 hours into a shift, and you're like, wow, did I just amazing what you just saw 8 to 10 hours, and you didn't put pen to paper, and now you got to think about it because now you got to, you've got to document the statements and your observations and all that stuff that you're now replaying all those things in your head, and we never we never taught how you deal with that.
Yeah.
And as we started getting deeper in the career, about 10 years in, 7 years in, those we started having those conversations. And what does that look like? But we're not where we're way better than we used to be. But you also have that pride thing, right? And that's the hardest thing to get is we don't want to we don't want to show weakness. And we think that if we're saying, hey man, I got to take a time out here for just a minute, that's people are going to think less of you, that this isn't, this is, I'm weak because, and that's ridiculous, right? That's not, we know better now.
Yeah.
We just we have to continue to act like we know better moving into the future.
Well, I think that the key word that you said in there was training.
Yeah.
Like I think the question then is, well, if you were better equipped to be able to handle those situations after the fact, if you were able to decompress, to downregulate, to have the tools and resources to be able to offload those things through training. Now it's not like this elusive woo woo thing, and you're like, I don't know what to do. So all I'm going to do is shove it down and just try to look strong. But if the training was reinforced of, hey, this is what you do after that, this is
Yeah.
how you breathe through that. This is, these are the resources. So I think the key word there was training. And we're seeing it all across the country. This is a conversation. This is now being integrated into academies and agencies. And, I'm making a prediction now. Everyone heard it here first. We'll see if it happens. But I really do think that there's going to be a day where there's not, we don't have two different silos of training and wellness. I think that
Hmm.
it's just going to be one thing. It's going to be
Yeah.
training, and wellness is a part of training. It's a part of longevity. It's how we're going to recruit and retain. And I know you talked about that a little
Mhm.
bit. I think that there's going to be more understanding about how you can be more effective in the day-to-day functions of your career if you are good in your body and your mind. And so
Right.
these are going to be combined, and it's just going to be training, and it's going to be normal. And I think it'll take a while to get there. I would say like 5 to 10 years that this is
Hmm.
just going to be like a really ingrained thing,
Yeah.
and we'll start to see the stigma go away even more.
No, I would agree. And I think sheerly out of necessity, because we know so much more than we did 20, well, almost 30 plus years ago now, right? We didn't understand. And it was a different time. It was, you had a lot of former military, right? Vietnam era veterans that experienced a whole lot, right? So those, we had a significant contingent upon that in leadership roles throughout this country in law enforcement. They were dealing with things, and like you're not prepared. You're not prepared to see the human carnage. Like no man, no nothing prepared. Big sport, played a lot of sports, and I'll equate it to your training, and it's all about reps, right? It's all about the muscle memory, and it's also about the physical memory, right? Not just physical, but the mental reps about going into situations which help your reaction time. But the first time you hold a dying child, like so if somebody dies in your arm, like that's powerful. You can have the conversation, but until you experience that, there's no substitute for what's going to go on in your mind. And the
Yeah.
string one or two or three of those in either that night in the same day or within 2 or 3 days of your shift in a week, powerful, powerful. And then we're not, at least then we weren't necessarily equipping our officers. Hey, you're going to, why are my pulse racing? Why am I breathing? What's going on? Sitting in your card car going, what's going on with my body physiologically? And now being able to say, well, hey, you're dealing with some stress. Are you at the panic, fight or flight, right? Is this a panic attack? Is this based upon everything that you've just experienced? And understanding that makes all the difference in the world with how you approach dealing with it. And those are the conversations to let them know. I look at you can't do this job and not experience fear regularly. For anyone says, well, I'm very leery and cautious around anyone that says I've been an X profession, especially in these types of profession, and I just, whether it's bravado or just, I don't know what, but just trying to say, well, I rarely get scared. I, uh, I've been scared
Mm,
plenty of times. So that's okay, right? That fear is okay. And we just have to be honest and talk about some stuff and create the environment where officers don't feel stigmatized when they say, you know what, I'm feeling a kind of way, and I got to figure some stuff out. Um,
yeah.
that's longevity, right? At the end of the day, I want everybody to come here and I want them to put their 25 years in because you can retire young, right? I mean, I started when I was young. You can get out young,
Mhm.
55 and be done. So the goal is okay. You don't want to be sitting in your early and mid 50s when you're ready to walk out the door and your backpack's full and you have no idea how to get unpacking.
Yeah,
That because your next chapter is going to be completely taken up by dealing with these things. So happy, long career, healthy career. If we can, it can kind of even not just continue on the path that we're on, but to even, I'll say, emphasize it more, like you alluded to about it's going to be not just wellness training and other training, it's going to be combining those so that we now get it ingrained into the culture of the organizations.
exactly. To your point, I think that there are three steps to growth and change. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is awareness. And so we talked about this. You're like, you don't know what you don't know. Like when you were coming up, like you didn't know how to do these things because it wasn't a part of the conversation. There wasn't this awareness of what this career can do to you or what is happening in your body when these things are, when you're experiencing these things on the job. Then the second one is education. So, educating people on, okay, we know that this is going to be an issue. We know that these things happen. What are the things that we can do to help with that? And so there's an educational component of, we talked about some of the stuff earlier, maybe it's faith that's going to help you get through some of these things. Maybe it's talking to someone, maybe it's talk therapy, maybe it's peer support, maybe it's having one day a week where you get out in nature and, you breathe through some of these things and you're really present, like whatever
Yep.
that is for you, right? What,
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that can help? And then the third one, and this is, I think, where we are a little stuck. I think that we haven't nailed down the third one, and that's action or
Mm-hmm.
implementation, right? So
Right.
I I think that there's so much power in awareness and education, but I think it's all for nothing if we don't actually do something about it,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, like, you could know everything, but if you're not doing it, it's not going to benefit you or anyone
Right.
around you. And so I think that having these conversations of, yes, this is important. Here are the things that can help. And then it's upon the organization to implement things, of course, but it's also really upon the individual because the organization can implement things all day long. And if the
Mm-hmm.
individual is not going to take action within their own lives, then it's not going to benefit anyone either. And
Right.
so I think the question now is, how can we transition from this educational phase and how can we enter into this implementation action phase so that we can start to see that change within, each individual? And one of the things that I agree with you that you said, and it's the importance of communication and having
Mm-hmm.
open lines of conversation around this.
Right.
And I would love to hear your perspective on this because one of the things, and I don't know if you see it, but the conversation used to be, and I think in some, of course, some organizations it's still going to be this way. It's not a
Yeah.
perfect system, but it used to be that leadership isn't on board, and that's creating stigma.
Mm.
But now I'm hearing a lot of this conversation of there are a lot of leadership who are on board and the stigma is peer to peer. And so people are afraid to talk about it amongst their peers because they're afraid of being judged by peers, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily management. And so I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, but also, some of the things that you're encouraging within your organization as far as open lines of communication and being able to talk about this stuff openly.
Well, great point. At first, I want to say that I agree wholeheartedly. It is probably, at least within this organization, and my predecessor uh, emphasized the wellness as well, and it does show it's a bit more peer to peer than it is the disconnect from leadership down.
Mm,
Um, again, part of it is it's that overall culture. Well, we've made some inroads into the cop culture or the police culture. There's still people that have that thought of I'll be seen as weak, or there'll be a stigma associated with me, or I can't do the job. And there's a litany of other things that are associated with that. But without a doubt, I think that it's imperative that leadership sets that tone, right? That first and foremost, I'm a believer that to really effectively lead, your people have to know you care about them,
Mm.
right? And you invest in those relationships. I'm a firm believer in that we're going to partner with the community and build a relationship within our community as we serve them, and we are going to lead the women and men that have one of the most difficult jobs in the world to do in this community by investing in our relationship with them as well. It's all relational. The success or failure, I don't care what you name the discipline, you name the profession, relationships, positive or negative, will make a determination on your success or failure. So if I have no relationship with the women and men that I've been, have the honor of leading, and I don't invest in them and get to know them, and it's hard, right? It's difficult. And the larger the agency, the magnitude just continues to grow. But there's ways in which you can try to do that, right? If you've got your people, they see you modeling behavior, then and they know what your expectations are, then they should be modeling that, and so on and so forth. But again, a quick 5 minute conversation in the hallway. If I'm in the office and my door's open, if I can stop what I'm doing, they don't have to have an appointment. If someone walks upstairs and asks to talk to me, I will stop what I'm doing if I can. Like if there's not someone sitting in the office with me, but I'll take as much time as I can with that individual, and that happens on a regular basis around here. Sometimes though, it's a conversation that they may get answers that they don't want to hear, but they understand I care about you and respect you enough. I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm telling you the truth because I'm concerned and I want what's best for you, and I want you to be able to achieve what you want to achieve in your career. But I want you to focus on your family and your career. I want your family to be part of this journey because you can't do this job. It's going to call you away from birthday parties. It's going to call you away from holidays. It's going to call you in the middle of the night to have to be taken away. So you can't do this without a strong supporting home life, right? If you have that family. So, and it's okay. There's going to be issues, but it's imperative about having the relationship and showing the effort. You're not going to get it right, but if they see you, or you're not going to get it right all the time, but if your people see you making that effort and it's genuine, man, there's a lot of fantastic relationships that you build, and the morale and the culture. That's how you start shifting culture in organizations, through the relationships that you develop and then grow in your time in the organization. But 100% with you.
One of the things that you had said to me offline that really stuck with me, and it's really in line with what you just said, is you said you can't lead someone if they don't know you.
Right.
And
Right.
that really stuck out. And I agree with you. I think everyone wants to feel like they are valued as a human being and that they're valued for the work that they do, the hard work that they do.
Yeah.
And if you're everyone can relate to this. If you're walking around and you feel like no one knows your name,
Yeah.
and you're busting ass out there and you're trying your hardest, and you walk around and you're like, man, like I don't even, I've never even said two words to anyone in leadership before. I could
Right.
imagine how that would, feel and how that would
Sure.
impact your morale and your performance. And
Right.
so I think you're right. I mean, obviously, the larger the organization, the harder it is, but I really appreciate that you talked about some of the efforts that you do make. And in the one thing that you said is even if it's a 5 minute conversation or it's saying hi to someone in the hallway,
Yeah. Yeah.
little things compound over time. The other thing that, you know, I I would love to see, and I don't know where I've learned this in like my relationships, right?
Mhm.
So, everyone knows that successful relationship, whether that's, a friendship or a romantic relationship with a spouse or whatever, you have to be a team,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's you against the problem. It's you against the bad guys. You guys are not fighting each other, right? If
Right.
you guys are fighting each other, it's never going to be a successful long-term relationship, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
you're trying to have a team unit mentality, and it's you against the problem, or it's you
Mhm.
against the issue, right? And so I look at this in the sense, and you'll like this because you're a sports guy, right? Within an organization, right? You're only as strong as your weakest link. And
Oh,
there's no
yes.
team that's going to win a Super Bowl if they all hate each other and they're not working together as a team, right?
Right.
There might be some people who maybe like you don't get along that well, right? They might are maybe they're not your favorite person, but you come together as a team and everyone wants the team to win. And you
Right.
should want each individual within that team to win. So how can we create a space or an environment within the organization where that's the attitude? It's like, it's not you guys against each other. It's you guys against the bad guys, right? Like
Right.
you're trying to support the community and you guys are trying to act as a team. And the only way that you can do that is if you guys want each other to win. If everyone's judging each other and everyone is, picking fun, and that's not wanting each other to win. And then when something bad happens, everyone's like, wait, like, why did that happen? And it's like, well, because maybe there was judgment or maybe there wasn't
Mhm.
support where there should have been. And so, how can we create a space, where no matter what, everyone's looking out for each other, everyone's taking care of each other, and
Sure.
everyone wants each other to win for the success of the team, for the success of the mission. And so I think that the more we can get that message across, maybe people will start to realize, because I think we've all been there. We've all judged people at some point.
Oh, yeah.
We've all rolled our eyes, we've all scoffed, we've all been the problem at one point,
Hmm.
or at least I have.
Sure.
I,
Yeah.
ca- I can admit that I have. I've done that before.
You're
But
not old.
but how can we look at ourselves and identify, are we supporting people? Are we creating an environment where someone can come up to us and open up? Can someone tell us if they're struggling? Are we that safe space for them because we're a
Mhm.
team, or are we creating more of a divide?
Well, excellent point. Um, again, people we're in the people business, right? And people can be messy and
Mhm.
throw in all of the stressors, natural stressors that everybody goes through, and then compound that with mental health, substance abuse, and you fill in the blank, and a whole other litany of things. And you know, you got to guard your heart, right? And it's all about. Do you remember the why? Why did you raise your hand and take the oath? What was that in your mind you understood, maybe not fully at the time, but you thought enough about the wanting to have the impact in a community to make it safer, to make it better. And sometimes I think, and we're people, right? And life happens, and sometimes we all forget the why, and we get self-centered, and we focus. And you mentioned mission, and what's our goal? What's our mission? And then you're balancing family and your profession, and you're getting ordered in because of we're short-staffed, and you've experienced some pretty traumatic events in the last couple of days, and you're still trying to process and work that through. And it gets big, right? It kind of gets to the point where, all right, how do you keep it from being overwhelming? And sometimes the magnitude just does that. And as we talk, what's the outlet to deal with that? But you, you've I mean, that's the balance, right? That's the what we're trying to address and develop a strategy long term to help deal with this is exactly what we're talking about. What does that balance look like, and how do we make it cultural within an organization and change this from eliminating the stigma, or the perception of weakness, and being able to say, man, I got to have a timeout for just a little bit here. And here's my reasons why. So that's what we're wrestling with. And how do you get to that balance? And it's through conversation and through relationship. Um, and I think one of the biggest things that, yeah, especially within law enforcement, I think we need to do a little bit better job of extending grace,
Mm.
right? And grace by, you're not excusing poor behavior, because we can't do that. We have to be accountable, right? Because we have the community where we serve provides us with a tremendous amount of authority. And we're going to make mistakes, but there's a big difference between a mistake or a bad day and then a willful act. So I'm not talking about a willful act. I'm talking about being able to extend grace in those moments so that we can help that individual be successful in dealing with whatever they're dealing with and bring them back and retrain them and get them going so that they can get back out and serve. So again, while we're going to hold everybody accountable, we're going to make sure that we're trained up. We also have to have we got to be mindful of a little bit of grace can go a long way.
I really like that word grace. And I think, we can look at this in a few different angles, giving other people grace, but also
Mm-hmm.
giving ourselves grace.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
that we're so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
and understanding that, and this is my opinion, I think that perfection is a fallacy. I don't think that we're
Yeah.
ever going to reach perfection. I think the pursuit of striving to be
Mm-hmm.
the best you can be is worthwhile, and I always try to be that within myself, but I think giving yourself grace when maybe you fall short, or maybe you fall off of wellness, or maybe you do judge someone and you recognize it and you're like, man, I shouldn't have done that, and giving yourself grace and doing
Yeah.
better next time. One of the things that kind of popped in my head, and I'm really curious how you feel about this, I've never thought about this before, but you talked about your why, and knowing your why and why you got into this career. And you said to, protect and serve, right? And we think of this in the context of the community. How can we also create the conversation where you're also protecting and serving your team within the organization? How can you do that to the best of your ability?
Sure.
How can you also protect and serve yourself and your family? And those things are going to look different, right?
Right.
How can you every day show up and say, how can I be the best version of myself? How can I take care of me so I can take care of others? And how can I protect and serve my team? How can I protect and serve the community? What does that look like in action? Like how can we identify that within ourselves? What is something that I can do today that I can, put forth within myself, my family, my community, my team? I think that sometimes we have such a one track thought process, of like,
Right.
it means this, but maybe we can expand that thought process and say, well, it could also mean this, and we can also apply it here.
Wow. Listen, I excellent point. So what just popped into my mind when you stated that is it's not just about protect and serve. We focus immediately community.
Mhm.
Okay, well if your why, if you lose your why, and your why has to be holistic,
Mhm.
right? So if I'm not protecting and serving yourself by making sure that you're getting that backpack emptied and you're spending that time with your family or your loved ones or friends and all the decompress, if you're not protecting and serving from a holistic self-help and healthy standpoint, then all right, you've lost your why on some level, right? So if my why completely only focuses professionally, well, what happens? I become over involved in work. I working longer hours. And by the nature of some of these jobs, yeah, we put in a lot of time, but your focus now, you lost the why because your focus is everything associated here. And you've completely lost the why in other relationships and family and hobbies and being able to decompress. So I'm with you. I think when I talk about the why, you have to make sure that you got to be whole first
Mhm.
and continue to and have an understanding that there's going to be hits to that, but you have to go back foundationally. And I call your why is your foundation.
Yeah.
Everything else comes out of that foundation. If your foundation's weak, then you can only run so long and so hard professionally before you're going to have a, there's going to be a meltdown. But if you can keep that foundation right and understand foundationally, this is my why is here, and I have core values, and what all that grounds us into the why, then it's a lot easier to be very clear and wide eyed about my profession and dealing with the things in this community. And so I agree 100% with what you're saying. But when I say, what's your why? That why comes back to your foundation, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and because I'll call it, I don't call it retreating, but we're all going to come back, right? When we come home, where we going? We're going to go to our place where we can take that breath, and we're going to go to our place where we can rejuvenate and we can get energy. What's the why? The why fill in the blank. If you've got a family, it's your family. It's your hobbies, it's your friends, it's all those things that bring you back to here's my why, because I want to protect and serve. I want to make a difference in the community, but I want to do so in a manner and method that I am not sacrificing my family. I'm not sacrificing my health, because if I do any of those things, then my foundation isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's really interesting because when you ask those questions, I've been in plenty of briefing rooms where we ask this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's twofold, right? Like, what is your professional why? What is your wellness
Sure.
why?
Yeah.
There's different whys, but when we ask why, and next time, anyone who's listening, next time you do this, like notice it because it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting to me.
Yeah.
No one ever says themselves, right? It's
Nope.
always going to be external, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Let's put this as the example that you said. If your why is because you want to help the helpless, you want to protect and serve, like that is your why. You want to
Yeah.
help people. Then there has to be a reverse engineering of
Right.
saying, okay, if that is your why, or if it's your family, if your family is your why, how can we work backwards and figure out what needs to happen in order for you to be the most effective person
Right.
in for that role, right? So if you want to be the best wife, the best husband, the best, what does it take to get there? We have
Right.
to work back to what you said, that foundation. And the
Mm-hmm.
foundation is you,
Yeah.
always.
Yep.
And so it's not an either or. I think that wellness is not optional. It's
No.
not it's not an
Right.
option, it's a requirement. Like we have to start viewing this as a non-negotiable because you cannot show up for your family in the most effective way if physically and mentally you're not good. If your
Right.
foundation is crumbling and you are just you're that duck, the duck analogy where like on the surface you look good, but underneath you're paddling like hell to stay afloat and you're just,
Right.
you're struggling. You cannot show up for your family and be the best partner. So, what is your why? Let's identify that first, and then let's
Mm-hmm.
reverse engineer and work backwards to, like you said, that foundation. And what are the steps that you need to take on a daily basis to be able to show up as the best version? And then again, giving yourself grace because not every day is going to be the same. Some days are
Right.
going to be harder than others. But as long as we continuously check in with ourselves, identify what our why is, reverse engineer back to the foundation, and then identify what we need to do and what those incremental steps are over time, we're going to set ourselves up for success long term.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think the driving factor in what would be successful is understanding that it's consistency, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that it's a process, but it's consistency within the process, and understanding that it's okay to fail. Like no one hits the mark all the time. It's just not possible, right? So you're gonna fail. But I can tell you, look, I have failed a tremendous amount in my life. Um, I've learned from it, right? Uh, Far more than my successes. It's been my failures have been far more impactful to me, and especially again I'll say as you kind of grow, you kind of reflect and go, wow, I understand now why that happened, right? Whether and I look at a success, I don't really focus on though. I focus where I failed more than I mean. It's nice to look back, oh, we did a good job here, but I've learned so much more from my failures than I have ever learned from being successful. um Not great, but that's the truth. The truth is simply I'm going to learn from my failures. And if we get grace, right, understand process, and it's okay to be critical of yourself when you fail, right? Uh, but it's also okay to kind of unpack it and learn from it, and then, but not repeat those same mistakes or errors, right? And again, there's various degrees of magnitude within the mistake, but um, it's a process, right? The process is what we have to do is consistency within that process builds long-term health,
Yeah.
and extending grace. And you're not going to hit the mark all the time, but my gosh, the more you hit the mark, the better the habit becomes. And you can't have a habit without consistency.
Yeah. Even the best quarterbacks throw interceptions.
Oh, yeah.
Even the
Right.
best quarterbacks, fumble the ball, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
I agree with you. I think I I don't want to say I encourage failure because failure never feels fun. And of course, like you
Right.
always want to like put your best foot forward. But
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think that if we could be less afraid of failure, I think that I think we would succeed even more, to be honest.
Yep.
And when we do fumble that ball and we, fall flat on our face, which
Yep.
happens, it's how you get back up that matters. And
Yep.
are you willing to learn from it? Are you willing to grow from that? You
Right.
know, or are you going to sit there and, say, "Oh, I failed," and that's it. You're never ever going to see anyone who's elite, who's at the top of their game, who didn't get back up and say, "Okay, how could I have done better for next time? What am I going to do to
Right.
improve myself for next time?" And I think that's resiliency. I think that that's the grit that's required to keep moving.
Mhm.
And I think also having a positive attitude is really important. If you get up
Right.
and you're like, you know what, like that was not fun. I'm going to be better next time. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity to grow. I think having that gratitude of like, man, like, because if you're not growing, you're dying. That's my saying all the
Yeah.
time. I know it sounds really morbid, but how grateful can we be for the opportunity to still grow and learn?
Yeah.
That means that we're still alive. We still got some life left in
Yeah.
us. Like we still care. I
Yeah.
think that when we want to grow, it means that we still care and we want
Yeah.
that. Like we still
Oh,
want that fire in our belly, to keep us going long term and to create that longevity in our lives. And when you don't have that, I think that's when you start to worry. So I agree with you. I think it's how can you grow? How can you learn from those things? I know that we're running short on time. I feel like I could talk to
oh,
you for hours and hours and
oh,
hours,
no.
but um, you have already given so much incredible advice and words of wisdom, but I have to ask the question.
Go.
For the younger generation, the men and women who are
Mhm.
younger in their career, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Something that maybe you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Wow. Great question. I, for me, and because not just what we're struggling with, but across the country, we're struggling with attracting quality women and men that want to come in and serve. And again, we've alluded to some of kind of the issues nationally would have contributed to our shortcomings when it comes to recruiting. Um, I think there's still young people out there looking for their purpose, right? Looking to want to make a difference where they live. And my encouragement is, again, I'll say, aside from the last decade plus of, and I'll call it kind of the beating up of the profession of law enforcement, right? The defund the police. You don't have to go back in the past, and there's some things that have occurred that, gosh, dotted our eye, right? That we I get it, right, and we understand it. Um, but what I want to tell, in the twilight of my career, what I'm hoping for, and I'm hoping for those individuals that are looking to answer the call, that can find their purpose in service, do so with a servant's heart, and understand that there is nothing, it's a noble profession when done properly. And the satisfaction that you can get about making a difference in a profession that you will come to love if you really understand it and you really invest in it, keeping mindful of what your foundation should be. Um, you can walk out of this profession and just feel very satisfied and understand that you gave it, you left everything on the field, right? You've won the race, you've left everything on the field, and hey, there'll be bumps along the way, but keep the most important things the most important. And man, we need good people, we need good women and men to step up, and that's my hope. My hope is words of wisdom: don't be afraid to step up and understand you can find your purpose in service.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this conversation, and
I did well.
I value I think the older I get, the more I value time. So I really do
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing some with me today.
No, I do. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And thank you for reaching out, Paige. It was great.
Of course.